Good evening and welcome. I'm Judith Fianda, CEO at Australian Philanthropic Services, and it's my absolute pleasure to welcome you this evening to Philanthropy in Action, Legacy, Impact and Long-Term Investing, and long titles. That's the other thing I should probably put in there. With an evening focused on legacy, history and the long term, both past and future, it is real and important to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we meet this evening, the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation. I acknowledge their continuing connection to land, water and culture, and more widely, I acknowledge the 60,000 plus years of Indigenous history in this country and all elders, past, present, and the next generation of leaders emerging. So welcome. Welcome to everyone in the room. Thank you for coming. And to the 300 plus people that we have joining us online this evening, right round the country via live stream. Welcome. Thank you for taking the time this evening. As always, we have a packed evening of interesting discussion. I've been so looking forward to tonight because I'm a big fan of Ingrid and Emily and the Albert family. And I don't just mean the music of the family, so much of which is the soundtrack to my youth. That tells you how old I am. But I do want to take a couple of minutes before we start to report to you, our APS stakeholders. APS has had a couple of big years in terms of its internal work. And to those of you who are APS private ancillary fund clients, you will be well aware that we have built a new PAF portal and brought our PAF accounting in-house. To those of you with an APS giving fund, having a portal that is simple and easy to use is not new. The APS Foundation led the way some years ago with that. But it is great at last to have all of our clients connected to us and our service via a secure gateway. That substantial investment of time and resources has produced new systems and new processes, improved our cybersecurity and increased productivity. All the good stuff. APS is a charity, as you know. So all of that work is done with an eye to keeping fees low and making structured giving as simple as possible for our existing clients and being able to sustainably offer that opportunity to many more Australians. Our recent internal focus has not prevented the team from doing whatever we can to spread the word about the benefits of structured giving, which is, of course, our reason for being. So how are we going with that? At this event last year, I reported to you that APS had just over 800 clients who had generously gifted in FY23 $162 million to charities and over $750 million since inception. At the end of financial year 24, APS clients had given more than $200 million to charities for the year, and $950 million was the total since inception. They are terrific FY24 numbers that translate into literally thousands of gifts to thousands of different charities. But those numbers are 9 months old now. One of the advantages of our new system is cleaner and faster data. So I'm pleased to report to you that as at today, APS now has 985 clients. And from 2013 to date, the generosity of APS clients has resulted in $1.24 billion being gifted to charities. 985 clients. You can imagine how tempting just a little bit of rounding up might be at this point. But the data is what the data is. So it's 985. Still, in about another fortnight, we are likely to welcome our 1,000th APS client. Even so, with all of that, the 2024 Productivity Commission report into philanthropy noted that about half of all taxpayers with a taxable income of more than $1 million do not claim any tax deduction for charitable giving. That's about 13,000 Australians with income of more than $1 million a year who are not making or not claiming a deduction for charitable gifts. Clearly, there is much more for APS to do, with the assistance of professional advisors, such as financial advisors, accountants and lawyers, in terms of raising awareness of structured giving as an elegant solution for those folks and the attendant benefits for the community. The media too has an important role to play in raising awareness, and it is really pleasing to see increased coverage of structured giving as part of the consideration of the intergenerational transfer of wealth and estate planning. So what's next at APS? There is a lot more to do and build, and we have a long list. I'll mention just two things. Having been around for more than 13 years, it is now time for APS to prepare for an emerging client need, which is a handy and polite euphemism. We have just launched our Giving Legacy materials to all giving fund holders to ensure we understand your wishes for your giving fund once you are no longer around or no longer able to communicate those wishes easily to us. Similar materials will shortly be available for PAF shareholders to build on the conversations that we already hold with our PAF clients. We have a survey coming to you soon. We have not done this before in this format at all, and the team knows how much I am personally irritated by surveys. So rest assured, it has been constructed to be as simple and informative as possible. If you can, please do take the time to engage with it. We will be listening carefully, sharing the results and incorporating what we can, where we can, in terms of future improvements and developments. It's time for me to get out of the way and let the discussions of the evening begin. We'll have about half an hour of discussions with Ingrid and Emily and our own Fiona Higgins, after which we will move straight into hearing from Chris Cuff, AO. You likely know Chris already as the founder and chair of Australian Philanthropic Services and as a respected and long-experienced investment professional. He is also the investment manager of the APS Foundation General Portfolio. I'll simply name drop some of his past or current roles: Colonial First State, Challenger Financial Services Group, UniSuper, Third Link, Hearts and Minds, Argo Investments Limited, Global Value Fund, and so on. He also sits on the Paul Ramsay Foundation Investment Committee. For anyone who does not know our Fiona Higgins, she has been part of APS since before APS was APS, and she was one of the original 3 founding directors in 2012. And she's worked in the sector for more than 20 years in a variety of executive and board roles. Let me mention just one, the Fairfax Family Office. She has a number of tertiary qualifications, volunteers as a crisis support worker on a national phone line, works as a pro bono advisor on several boards and committees. And if that were not enough, she's also a published author with a list of 4 works of fiction and a memoir to her name. And she facilitates a literary series of conversations with authors at a Sydney restaurant. APS is fortunate that amongst all of that, Fiona finds time to serve as APS's Specialist Advisor Giving. I'll leave you now in Fiona's capable hands, and after the discussion, Fiona will hand straight over to Chris, and then I'll be back to close the evening. Fiona. So want to do air guitar. Thank you.
Thank you, Jude, and welcome everyone once again. It was all I could do not to swagger an air guitar my way to the stage then, and of course that musical introduction was no mistake or random selection. It's part of a specially curated playlist that we've compiled for this evening in honour of the Alberts family's long-standing eclectic imprint on Australia's cultural identity since 1885. And 1885 was the year the family story really started in Australia, when Swiss immigrant Jacques Albert, or perhaps Jacques, I wasn't sure, but Jacques. Jacques Albert opened an unassuming watch and clock repair shop in Newtown in Sydney. And from there, the business expanded into musical instruments and sheet music, morphing over time into music distribution and across multiple generations, to licensing, broadcasting, publishing and production, and no doubt many more enterprises beyond that. Ultimately bringing to the world some of Australia's most iconic performers and artists, such as the Easy Beats, John Paul Young, Love Is in the Air, Billy Thorpe and the Aztecs, the Angels, Rose Tattoo, and of course AC/DC. Now, most people over the age of 50 will recognise these names, and if perchance you do not, get thee to Spotify. It's impossible to overplay the impact of the Alberts family on Australia's cultural landscape. So for those interested in learning more about the nuance of that, there is helpfully a fabulous family biography authored by journalist Jane Albert and published by Hardy Grant, called House of Hits, which I highly recommend, and captures the family legacy up until around 2010. 140 years is quite a footprint, so I'm delighted that joining us tonight to unpack the family's legacy and ongoing leadership are two fifth-generation Alberts family members, Ingrid Albert and Emily Albert, both of whom are executive directors of the family business now known as Alberts. They also hold complementary and connected roles in other parts of the business. Ingrid is head of the Tony Foundation, the philanthropic arm of Alberts, and a private ancillary fund, which invests in the power of music to improve outcomes for young people. Meanwhile, Emily is head of impact at Alberts and lead of music education right from the start, a national initiative that advocates for universal access to quality, sequential, ongoing music education to all primary schoolers in Australia. So let's welcome our special guests. Ingrid, the bulk of the business, I understand, was sold in 2016, and Alberts is now a diversified business being led by the fifth generation of Alberts family, yourself and Emily included. It's quite a legacy, I imagine, to carry on your shoulders. And when you think back across the legacy that precedes the current generation, I wonder, do you discern any common recurrent themes or golden threads woven across the generations that continue to this day and inform what is now Alberts?
Great. Thanks, Fiona, and it's a pleasure to be here, so thank you for having us here. It's an honour, I guess, to be talking to everyone here. So, as Fiona mentioned, we obviously have a very long history and many evolutions of change, and we had a very big change for our family business in 2016, where we needed to sell the operational side of the business. And before that time, those 60 years before that, we'd been known for our influence on the music industry. So it really was a big shift for us as a family. We were all in the business at that point. We were all board directors, which was great, which meant we all had a sort of seat at the table and a voice to be able to talk about that change. And when we needed to make that change, which we did, we sold the business, but we needed to decide what next as a family. We had a fairly diversified business, so a main investment portfolio. We had the foundation. We had the building we're in. We have a small farm. We had the music catalogues, essentially. So, fairly diversified. And so as we looked back it was really important for us to understand what values through 140 years have held true. What do we still sort of own and can take forward with us, and perhaps what would we like to bring as a fifth generation? So the first one, which was our pioneering spirit, which is a value that over time we've seen generations before us, whether it was from sheet music to then looking at protecting the rights of artists by being a founder of APRA, for example, then seeing the opportunities through that music needed to be made accessible for all. So then being a co-founder of radio stations back in the 1930s, moving into then TV, seeing the opportunity to get music accessible in TV. So our forefathers were always at the front of technological change and always looking at how we could sort of move the dial forward. And that's something that then into music, of course, and beyond that is something that has stayed true to who we are, and today has also stayed true to us as a generation as we move the business forward. So that's been a really important thread of backing pioneers and pioneering ideas. The second one, I would say, is having long-standing relationships with people and backing those pioneers for the long term. So we've always held really long relationships with our partners, whether it's AC/DC or partners in the past, and that is something that today we hold true. So if we make an investment, we plan to be there as a partner. We plan to invest for a long-term time frame with patient capital, or whether it's even with our organisations philanthropically, we always do very long-term grant rounds as well. So everything we do, we make sure that we believe in the founder, we believe in their mission, we believe in their values, we're aligned with their values. That's very important for us, and then therefore we know that we can commit to being together with them and partnering with them long-term. And then the third one, which is probably more obvious, is our belief in the arts and creativity, and the belief that you can create both cultural value as well as financial value, but there's also different opportunities to invest in the arts, whether it's for a financial return is one side that we have successfully done through our history, but also on the other side of knowing that the arts, music and creativity perhaps need different types of capital as well to support them along the way. So that is something Ems will talk to shortly about different ways that we've invested in arts and creativity, but another fundamental pillar. Now, they're the long-standing ones that through the 140 years have held true, but there's two additional ones, which as our generations come on have been really important to us, and one of them that's become clear is collaboration and the need to collaborate with others in the space. Firstly, because we know we don't bring those diverse perspectives that we need, so we acknowledge the benefit of bringing diverse perspectives around the table. It helps our decision-making and will make better social and financial outcomes in the end. And the second part to that would be, for us, we feel that we can only really shift the dial, and again, I'll get Emily to talk to the impact space of what we're doing there, but we can only really shift the dial in these fundamental pillars that we want to change if we do that together with others in the sector, knowing, again, our limited knowledge in some areas and the need to draw others in the sector for their capacity or their knowledge or their understanding and really bring people together. So that's a really important part of it. The other part that we've also acknowledged, which is why we're here on the stage, is that we need to be more vocal in what we're doing. So we were quite a private family business for all of our past. We sort of stood back and we let the businesses do the talking, I guess you'd say, like the music business, all the artists were front and centre. And we've realised that, again, if we want to create change across these really important areas, we needed to also be there trying to use our voice, not just our capital, to create that shift towards having a positive impact on people and planet. So that's become another critical pillar for us that we've been working on, and there's a music education advocacy project that Emily leads that brings in collaboration and using our voice to create systems change in Australia that I think really exemplifies that I'll let her talk to. So I think that.
Thank you. We welcome you using your voice, and I know you've covered the family values, but one of them on the website is humility, and it's always tricky, isn't it?
Yeah.
That balance of wanting to speak to the things that matter, but without being seen or being potentially perceived as trumpeting.
That's right,
and
that's where I think the collaboration and the diverse voices for us is so important. So we always try and bring a balanced view wherever we are, so that we know we're not the experts.
Yeah,
most of the time, if any of the time, but if we can bring a broad range of views together and then try and advocate for what we all believe in and, a values-aligned mission or goal, then we hope that can lead to the best outcome.
Great, thank you. So last year at this event, we had three eminent panellists talking to us about Capital with a Conscience, Michael Trail, Julianne Wilkin and John McMurdo, who I think is in the room tonight, and they spoke with passion about what investing for impact meant to each of them in their various domains. Albert's as a company, as you referenced, Ingrid, has been through quite an evolution over time in the thinking and practice of investment for impact. And I'd love you, Emily, to perhaps take us on that journey to share what that has involved and what it means for Albert's today.
Thanks, Fiona, and I'll just echo Ingrid's thanks for having us tonight, Judith and Fiona and team. It's great to be here with fellow APS clients and colleagues. So the impact story, I guess for us, when we came in as a fifth generation and we looked at the legacy of what had come before, not then 140 years, now 140 years, probably 125 or so, I think was the first time we kind of came together as a celebration. And, we'd never set out to be an impact investment business, but when we looked at the history of the family and the legacy, we were very proud of what had been achieved and the impact that had in that arts and cultural sector. And Ingrid talked to a few of them, but there were things like we had the first female CEO of a music company. There was a lot around accessibility, boomerang mouth organs and songsters taking music into homes, the radio business, the TV. So, and then taking an Australian sound to the world and backing Australian creatives. So I think we really wanted to build on what had come before and build on that pioneering spirit and backing pioneers, but we knew we also wanted to evolve it to bring our own flavour to what that meant. So as a generation, when we sat around and looked at what was next after that sale of the music business, and we had a lot of discussions about what might do, and our uncle was very encouraging of us finding something to be actively involved in together. And we really, we had a discussion about did it matter what we did, and there was a really strong consensus in that values alignment, which Ingrid spoke to, that actually what we did and how we invested and how we made our money did matter to us, and we wanted that to shape the sort of our chapter of the book that you refer to, which hopefully one day will be written by Jane. So we really looked at, and we started sort of impact investing as such with the foundation, and we came to that idea that the money that was in our foundation had all been set aside to do good in the world. So we really wanted to mobilise all of it, both the investments and the granting, towards having a positive impact. And Ingrid will talk further to what the work that we've done in the foundation. But when we looked at the business, that desire to do well and do good went beyond the foundation and really came into the business and what we wanted to do there as well. So we came together and brought our stakeholders in. So that was both the family, our board and our staff, to look at what were the areas of interest, where did we feel there were areas that needed to be worked on, and where did we feel we had a role to play in creating change. And that led to the development of our impact framework, which now sits across the business and really guides everything that we do, and we try to bring that lens to all our assets, and that's happening over time.
All assets, and including the foundation, the Tony Foundation.
Including the foundation. And with that framework, we've got 4 core pillars within that. The vision for the business is pioneering a vibrant and sustainable future for all. And then we have these 4 impact pillars. The first one, which is vibrant culture, a tie to our history and our legacy, and I think we just very firmly believe that a flourishing society has a vibrant culture at its heart. The other 3, one is around environmental sustainability, and that's very much that flourishing planet. And then it's sort of about flourishing people, and that's looking at healthy minds and quality. And so we bring that lens now over investments, philanthropic activity, and the rest. And one example is at the time we were looking at, okay, how do we take this impact lens and also our backing pioneers and, new business venture ideas. And we started Albert's Impact Ventures, which was an allocation of capital to back for-purpose pioneers, so early stage startups across those 4 thematic areas. And we now, 6 years in, have 22 portfolio companies in that, spanning, one or more of those thematic areas.
And these are private companies. These are not
Private
companies limited by guarantee. They're not charitable entities.
That's right. No,
but
this is
they are for-purpose ventures.
For-profit, high-growth endeavour.
Yeah. And so it's potentially, Albert Impact Ventures is potentially supporting the development of pipeline, which is, of course, a refrain you hear all the time in philanthropy, that there's an absence. I would do more impact investment with my corpus if there was a promising pipeline. Potentially, there could be.
We hope that they will go on to, and we definitely, we invest alongside other investors and other VC funds, and they're, available.
And any interest from traditional philanthropy, charitable trusts supporting Albert Impact Ventures initiatives because they could?
Yeah. It's a venture, but it's a venture capital play, so really we're alongside venture capitalists who are looking for high growth, high returns, but also high impact. So that concept of every dollar that comes through is inherently linked to an impact outcome, but we're really looking for outsized impact because it's such a high risk play alongside an outsized return.
Yeah.
Whereas I think the foundation plays a bit of a different role. That is very much a high risk, high return, high impact play that we've chosen to take.
So on the foundation, with the responsible investing framework that you've introduced and developed and now deployed, can you share with us what that looks like, so what the process was like?
And I think that was a bit of a journey, and Emily ran the foundation before me, so she was actively involved in this transition. But one of the first things when we looked at how we could shift our business gradually towards impact, the foundation's obviously a place that people would naturally look at to begin. We had 5% that we were granting out, being a PAF, obviously, with APS, that was achieving high impact outcomes, and we had 95% that we weren't really thinking about. We did begin the foundation with a social capital note, with Good Start Early Learning, and the proceeds actually went to that, but we didn't really have a structure or framework, so then all the other investments end up not really having sort of a consideration as to the impact they were having. So when we took the different lens of, we actually have sort of 95% of investments that could be working really hard to mobilise change in this world, and we only have 5% that are actually doing the change, it made us think very differently about how we look at the foundation and how we can structure it all in its totality to have a positive impact. So that's when we actually created a separate investment committee to run this for us. We needed a more hands-on approach where we were very active, and we are members of the investment committee. And we created a responsible investment framework, or what we now call is a total impact portfolio approach. And that considers impact alongside risk and return in every investment decision we make. And just like there are different types of return targets, there's also different types of impact targets. So over time, we moved all our investments away from what you would consider harmful and all into a very minimum do no harm, and then what some would know as an impact investment, so very high impact, and then others that are a little less than that, so benefit or contribute, benefit solutions, for example. So now we have a portfolio that looks very different in terms of the impact. It's been about 5 years now that we've deployed almost all of it, and we have the same return target as we did before, and we're still achieving that return target. So it's been a really good way to prove out that you can do both. You can have a positive impact and make a financial return alongside it as well that is market rate. So it's been a really good sort of case study for us when we think about the broader business and how we can continue to evolve.
And any obstacles that you had to overcome either internally or externally to ultimately, I mean, I'm not sure what the time frame was of the development of the framework to land at this very coherent methodology.
Definitely.
Yes.
So first of all, I think we needed a separate committee, which I mentioned, looking at this to give it the time and energy. But even more importantly, we brought in Australian Impact Investments as the advisors to assist us, because sometimes I think you need that external voice to relay the types of messages that perhaps just don't always get heard internally. So we brought them on. They do all our due diligence. They help with our pipeline, and they're very actively involved. Kylie Charlton's also an investment committee member. And that, I think there were challenges, but by doing that, that helped bring everyone along the journey. And I think education, she brought the education as well, which was a major barrier. All of us, I think, Emily had more education in the space, she'd been working longer, but the rest of us were new to the impact space. So having that education and us all going on the journey together, I think really helped overcome those initial challenges that we faced.
And one of your family values is courage, which probably helped you on that journey as well. So advocacy is a key tenet of Albert's impact work as well, and I think there's no better exemplar of advocacy in action than Music Education Right from the Start, which is an Albert's initiative and is led by Emily Albert. For those of you who might not be aware, music education is in a very fragile state in this country. Although music is part of the national curriculum, only 18% of primary schools have a dedicated music teacher delivering syllabus, and most of those positions are predictably located in private schools. Now, if you attempted to think of music education as a kind of warm and fluffy, nice to have for primary schoolers, there's a growing body of global research demonstrating that music education is foundational for other types of core learning, including literacy and numeracy skills. So, reflecting, Emily, on last year's NAPLAN results, which demonstrated that 1/3 of Australian students are falling behind numeracy and literacy benchmarks nationally. And we also have solid evidence that delivery of music education lifts both, has a lifting effect on both. Why aren't we, as a nation, investing heavily in music education? And what does Music Education Right from the Start intend to do about that?
Thanks, Fiona. And I have to say it's an area that's very close to my heart, and the more I learn, the more impassioned I become about it as well. So as Fiona mentioned, so Music Education Right from the Start is a national collaborative initiative whose aim is to ensure that every Australian primary school child has access to a quality, sequential and ongoing music education. So it was founded and it's led by Alberts, but we say it's really owned by many. It is a collaborative initiative. It was really an evolution of the work of the Tony Foundation. And I guess there were sort of three key factors that led us to doing this work. The first one, as you mentioned, Fiona, despite music being on the national curriculum, it is not in every classroom and every school. And that is, the realisation for us was that despite, we funded a number of music programs going into schools through some great organisations, and just became aware that actually, if that funding wasn't there, that school wouldn't have a music program. Now, if you didn't have maths or English in a classroom, I dare say people would be up in arms.
It would be public
music
outcry.
Seems to fly a little under the radar. The second piece is that as you mentioned, the evidence base is overwhelming. Not only is music beneficial just in its own right, but if you look at all the issues that currently are confronting education, so literacy, numeracy, school attendance, engagement, social emotional wellbeing, music has a role to play in all of them. Now, it's not going to be the silver bullet that fixes everything, but it certainly has a role to play. And if you have one tool that can fix such an array of issues, why wouldn't you be deploying it? And then the third piece was really that at the time in the philanthropy world, there was a lot more talk around funding systems change and advocacy work, and the role of philanthropy as this risk capital able to take a slightly different systemic approach, which really made us, and I was personally quite inspired by the work of the Reichstein Foundation and John Spearings, who've done a similar piece of work around gambling reform, and that kind of formed a bit of the blueprint for what we might do for music education right from the start. So we really thought, what can we do beyond funding the individual organisations? Now, we're going to keep funding them because systems change doesn't happen overnight, and they play a really, really important role doing great work in the ecosystem. But what if we could play another role as well at looking at what are some of those issues in the system that mean not every child is accessing it? The other contextual factor to think about is that there have been individuals and organisations, I mean the amazing late Richard Gill, who have worked for decades promoting, advocating for music education and showing the benefits. And yet when we look at what's happening across numerous states and territories, it has gone backwards. So our hypothesis was that by working collaboratively and working together and having a combined voice to government and decision makers, that we would be able to affect greater change as a collaborative. So how did we start? We first went and thought, okay, well, I thought we need to gather everything in one place. Like, we just need one document that says what is the lay of the land. And we funded Dr. Anita Collins, who's now a colleague. She's a world-renowned, I would say, music education expert and music educator. And she, along with colleagues, worked to pull together what is the evidence base? Can we have that all in one place? Can we do a snapshot of what does it actually currently look like across Australia in the different states and territories? And can we identify what are those key barriers to it working well? And that's been a really sort of foundational piece for us. And the next step was that we took that out and we tested it. So we tested it with a wide range of stakeholders and got the feedback that, yes, that stood up. So we used that then to form an advisory group and develop a 3-year strategy for, okay, how might we start to do this? And I think importantly, and Ingrid was working really closely on the project at this time, we got commitment from the family to put core funding into the initiative. And this was a big courage leap to say, let's do something really different. It's outside our wheelhouse. It's nothing we've done before. What do we know about systems change and advocacy? But we had an idea, we had a plan, we had a broad collaboration, and when we decided to put funding for an initial 3-year period to see, could this get legs? So our strategic plan had 3 key priorities. First was around, so there were a number of barriers identified, and we realised we couldn't change all of them. The school curriculum, very hard to change. What were the levers that we could pull, and where did we have the possibility to have an influence? So the first was around school leadership and ensuring that principals and those that sit around them understand that place and purpose of music within a holistic education. Secondly is the teaching workforce and ensuring we have confident and competent teachers to take music into the classroom. And then the third piece was about collaboration and that we could achieve more together. Now, underpinning all of that was a growing knowledge amongst the group that there was actually no data that existed. So we had all this anecdotal evidence that, you know, music was at best taught for 1 term of the school year, or, you know, they sang a song once a week, or there was a song was played instead of the bell to change lessons. So we knew there was great disparity and inequity in what was being experienced, but we didn't really know what was happening. So we knew we had to go and actually find that data and fund research into building that evidence so that we can have policy informed by research. So in terms of what we've done since then, the key activities, we've got 3 working groups who really thrilled to have Fiona sitting on our advisory working group. In all
transparency.
We've got an advocacy working group and a knowledge-based working group. We've undertaken key pieces of research to bring that better understanding of the situation. So those have been a lot around initial teacher education and teacher surveys of what's actually happening in schools. We've developed solution papers. So I have to say the research on initial teacher education was terrifying. 8 hours on how to teach music in a 4-year degree. If you've never learnt music yourself, I dare say you don't come out of that degree confident to take it into a classroom. So we put together a solutions paper of what could happen in the short, medium and long term to help create that change. We've advocated to government. So last year in New South Wales, off the back of some pre-election conversations with with John Graham and Prue Carr, who were then in opposition, they made a commitment to holding a parliamentary inquiry and also to funding our research. And last year we had the New South Wales Joint Select Committee inquiry into arts and music education and training, which reported at the end of the year. And really excitingly, we have now the promise of a 10-year music education plan for New South Wales. We formed really strong coalition of allies, And we've just completed our second 3-year plan, phase 2, with some further committed funding from the family.
Fantastic. And presumably you are open to contributors and potential involvement that is not necessarily financial for any giver that is interested in advancing the collective aims of music education right from the start.
It's absolutely a collaboration, and that's in all its forms. I was really fortunate to find a co-conspirator in Jeff Day, another APS client who's based in South Australia, with a common passion for music education, and he has been involved in the initiative for a long time and co-funded some research. We've had support from governments for research, but we also have collaborators who can advocate themselves. We have a stakeholder briefing next week on the national picture if anyone would like to join. It's an hour conversation as to what's happening, and we just welcome participation in whatever form.
Fantastic. We will definitely share the link and also your contact details in follow-up after this session, so thank you. Unfortunately, our time together is concluding rapidly, as much as I would like to continue discussing the multidimensional impact of Albert's, and especially music education right from the start. It's been hugely inspiring to hear you both reflect on what is unfolding and what has unfolded, and the involvement of fifth generation Alberts in driving that. And not inspiring exclusively for the initiatives involved, the responsible investment framework, the overarching methodology, music education right from the start, or Albert's impact ventures, but because your family is effectively providing a fabulous, in real time case study, certainly to APS and to the broader philanthropic sector, on how to, well, the practicalities of reconciling and preserving legacy, while at the same time empowering next generation leaders to advance their purpose parameters and to do so in a coherent way. So thank you for modelling that to the philanthropic sector, and I know that everyone at APS is delighted to count Alberts among our giving community. So thank you again. Let's express our appreciation. Actually, I believe that there are some small gifts here that I will give you before you.
It's not necessary.
Apparently, it's a chocolate treble clef. So
that's it.
That's highly appropriate. And someone at APS went well beyond their job description to achieve that.
Thank you.
And, thank you again. And speaking of longevity, impact, and perhaps a small swagger as he approaches the stage to discuss impact, let us welcome Chairman of APS, Chris Cuff.
Thanks, Fiona. That was great. Now, Judith didn't want to say it, but the doors will be locked at the end of the session until we've got 15 more clients, because we've got to get past 1,000 before we leave tonight. Not really. We don't bring them in dragging and screaming, do we? Okay, so I'm just going to give you a bit of an update of the APS Foundation. And the APS Foundation is a public ancillary fund. I know many of you know this, but it's worth going over some of the basics. It's a public ancillary fund. Probably by July this year, it'll be the largest public ancillary fund in Australia. It's the second largest at the moment, but I think we'll probably pass the other one soon. And we split, it has about just short of 400 million inside it, and about 650 clients or something like that. And it's growing quickly. We anticipate probably by about 2028, not many years away, it might even pass the $1 billion mark. So it's a big fund, growing bigger, and I think it will accelerate away from the pack for various reasons, but that's obviously biased. The foundation is broken into two bits. We have a portfolio that's called a general portfolio, which I look after, and there's a separate portfolio which we started a couple of years ago called the focused portfolio which has more of a focus on impact investing and ESG screens, either positive or negative. So people can sort of choose which area they go. And if we look on the buzzer, if we look at the first thing is the objective. What are we trying to do? You've got to have an objective if you're an investment in the investment world. So what we are trying to do, either portfolio, it's the same objective, is to get a rate of return per over rolling 7-year periods, and I'll come to the importance of that soon, of inflation plus 4%. So why do we come up with that number of inflation plus 4%? It's simply because we think we've got to give the clients in the fund have got to give a certain amount away each year under the laws that run public ancillary funds, and that's around 3 or 4%. It's around that because it's altered recently, still with the leftover of COVID, but also we're just basically trying to maintain the real value of people's money. So that's the inflation bit. If we can get the 4% on top, hopefully that covers close to what might be given away, plus the fees that APS earn off it. And as a not-for-profit, our fees are very modest, I can tell you, having been in the investment management industry a long time. But one of the great things about the foundation, the return we're looking for is it's over a rolling 7-year period. And there's no better times like right now with the turmoils going on in the world to know why you need a longer term target. You just simply will not get consistent returns year in, year out because of the volatility that's there. But in managing the general portfolio, I'm not concerned at all about the short term. I genuinely make investments with a 7-year time frame in my mind, and that takes me away from a lot of noise. Also, generally speaking, this is not an area that's heavily measured by the week or the month with competitors. We do have competitors out there, but it tends to be quite long-term measurements we're looking at. And to remind people of the what I call the unique features, I just mentioned there, the genuine long-term time frame. I should say a little bit more on that. It means you can be in some investments which you may know may not produce anything for a few years, and yet then you think, or I assess with help of others, that it might take off after that. But you need to be there at the start to be able to get a piece of the action. You just can't grab it later. It's a tax-free environment, so the foundation doesn't pay tax, which is great. And as most of you would know, people who come into the foundation, they've already had a tax deduction themselves, so the money can't go back to them. They can change to a different foundation if they don't like what we're doing, but generally the money is a one-way trip, so to speak. But the returns are tax-free, and of course we get refund of franking credits like anybody in Australia. We're in a strong liquidity position. The foundation grows rapidly, and in fact it's the month of June, which each year where the money really pours in. It's a little bit tax sensitive, no secrets around that, because people are getting a tax deduction and they're probably doing their tax affairs toward the end of the year to get an idea of what's going on. So we get strong inflows which are much greater than the outflows that going to the charities that we're contributing to on behalf of our clients. The clients give us advice and we go from there. And that's great to be in a strong net inflow position. We have low fees. It's very hard to measure fees in this industry like it is across the entire investment industry, but we strongly the view that we are amongst the lowest fees in the industry. And next, if I can make it work. Oh, wrong one. Yeah, I can manage money, but I can't use one of these. Okay, so yearly returns. Here's a graph of since the fund started in 2013, so it's been going just over 12 years, and it's been reasonably good yearly returns, pretty consistent. The orange bar at the end is it's the 8 months to the end of February. If I extended it to the 9.5 months to the end of April, it mightn't be as strong. We just don't know yet, but I'll get onto that too. It's pretty consistent, and part of the reason for that, I think, is because we have quite a balanced portfolio, which I'll talk about more. I was asking questions before this session about what will be the return over the next 12 months. And I thought the only way I can, if you tell me which day you're measuring from, that'll give me a better chance to answer it. But it's very, very, very difficult to say. You know, seeing what we've achieved for the first 8 months was pretty encouraging, but I'm sure the month of March and April so far are going to be tougher. But really, we're not interested in the one-year returns. As I said, our target is rolling 7-year returns. So by that, we just look at returns over a 7-year period, basically divide by 7. There's a little bit more maths in there. And then just look at that year by year. And that's why this graph starts at June 2019. The fund started in 2012, so the first 7-year period had finished by 2019. And if you move across there, it's quite satisfying returns. We are beating our target, which is good. It's got harder in latter years. You can see, if you look at the orange bars there, the last half dozen years, you see a slight upward slope, and that's because inflation came strongly into the system as a result of COVID. We hope that will start to ease, as it has, and come back down. But investment returns may not behave as well all the time too. But very satisfied at the moment. We're achieving our objective, which is great. Now, one of the things in an environment particularly like now is that you just want two things. You want a high-quality portfolio, which I guess beauty's in the eyes of the beholder, but I think it's pretty high quality. But the real key is to have diversification. So if you look at the pie chart there, assuming you can read it, we're in most what's called generally known investment sectors, whether it be which are normally shares, property or debt is the basic summary, but your shares could be listed, unlisted, international, local, and we have quite a well-balanced or very wide exposure to all that. And within each of those bars, there are many investments. So if you actually look through this portfolio to see the end number of securities, if you went directly through it, it would be in the hundreds, which allows me to sleep better at night, knowing that usually when something's doing poorly, there's something else doing well. So really the key is diversification, and I'm sure you'd have the same in your own personal portfolios. People ask me regularly, how often do I rebalance this portfolio? It's a question that's I sometimes ponder. What's the answer to that? I don't have set targets of how much in each sector. Many investment managers do, particularly the big industry funds. They'll just sit down and decide we want X% in Australian equities and Y% in international and on from there, and then they'll fill those buckets. I do it quite differently to that. I'm more looking at things that come across my desk. I think if that looks like it might achieve the return objective, then I look at, before investing in it, what would the portfolio look like if that security was in it? If the portfolio still looks okay to me, not overly warped or overly concentrated in one area, I'll tend to buy it. So this is the outworkings of that. But also, I mentioned before, the portfolio is in strong inflows, and so I've always got new money, although, as I said before, a lot of it does come in June, but there's always securities rolling off, maturing or whatever as well. So there's always new money to invest, and with that new money I can, move things around without having to actually sell stuff. So it's actually quite rare that I take money out of one bucket for a particular macro, let's say a macro reason, and put it somewhere else. I normally do that with new money that's coming in or money that's expiring. Occasionally you might do it, like times like now you feel like you've got to do something because the world's a tough place. But right now is a pretty good time to sit on a balanced portfolio and probably not knee-jerk too much. I'm satisfied we're doing the right thing by doing not much at the moment, which is might sound counterintuitive, but that's what we do. We have to invest. At the end of the day, we have to invest. We've got money, we've got a target, we've got to get there. That's a list of 4. That list could be 400. Investing is never easy. Some people say to me, "Isn't it really tough at the moment investing?" Well, yeah, but tell me a time it wasn't. It's always tough. You're forever weighing up where to put precious capital, which sector, which manager, which securities, whatever. And when I look through that list and think about where we are right of today, I was reminded yesterday about one of Churchill's famous quotes, that Americans can always be trusted to do the right thing once all other possibilities have been exhausted. So let's hope. I won't go further there. I'll get in trouble. There might be people who think what's going on with tariffs is good in the room, but if you are, you can leave early. Okay. So I just took one of the segments of that pizza you saw earlier to drill down to sort of show you, for no other reason, to show you the diversification underneath. This is the private equity and venture capital. So that's shares in companies that aren't listed on exchanges, and these are funds by particular fund managers, and there's lots of them, and within each of those funds there's various securities. It's a fairly big list, not necessarily on purpose, by the way, because when this fund was a lot smaller and I invested in something, then as the fund is much bigger, I need to top up, but I can't get back into that fund because it's closed, so I've got to go into a new thing. But this is a production line. As things are maturing, investments coming off that production line, I'm putting new ones in. And again, the reason to show you that was really just an example of the diversification underneath. I just wanted to wrap up with a couple of recent case studies. The first is, that's a picture of a very large battery energy storage facility. Well, it's an artist's impression. It's not built yet, but it's on the way to being built. APS Foundation played a pivotal role in the development of a very large storage system in South Australia. And we are involved with the project manager to help in other battery storage systems that are coming online. And that was a really great example of that particular type of capital was very hard for the particular developer to come by because it's a bit of a square peg and a round hole. But we understood it well. We invested in it. We made a 20% flat return. That's not an annualised return in about a 7-month period. And I think we've really assisted with the whole transition area. We're only doing a small bit there, but it actually showed us what we could do with our bit of capital. And, we heard from the ladies before about impact investing. We also have a number of investments that have very high impact, even though we're a general portfolio. And this is an example of one of them. And another recent case study, which I hope you'll all love, we have been for a long time an investor in Guzman y Gomez. I'm sure you'll all rush out and buy it in the weekend. We were a very early investor in that. So that was one of our private equity investments until it listed on the stock exchange last year. And in that investment, so far we've made 56% per annum return over the 6.5 years we've held it. So it currently trades on the market, even in these horrible times, at around $32. I think we bought in at about $2.20 or something like that. But that's 6.5 years, a lot of patience. We had to eat a lot of Mexican to get there, and we'll see where it goes. But we have lots of investments like that in the portfolio, and we hope, just as time goes on, they roll off, and now we're open to whether we hold on or sell those now that they're in the public market. So that's just. I could only do 15 minutes. The ladies at APS are very tough. If you don't get off the stage, you get in trouble. That's a quick smattering of some of the stuff we do. As I say, it's a big foundation. I love managing it, and people that help me do it. It's very, very satisfying, and it's been growing well. And remember, all that growth is for charity. No one else benefits other than charity. It's just a bigger pool. So thank you very much.
Thanks very much, Chris. My mother would be thrilled to hear you describe me as a lady. So all of that private girls' school education didn't go to waste. Thank you. Chris wisely told you that APS Foundation is actually the fastest growing public ancillary fund in the country. It's actually the most generous public ancillary fund in the country as well. So we've got funds coming in and we've got funds going out as well to terrific charities and supporting activities in the community. It's really a fantastic virtuous circle of investment and giving. I just have some well-deserved thank yous to round off the evening. Thank you very much, Chris, for your presentation, as always. And I did want to thank not just you, but I wanted to thank the fund managers that work with you, and most of whom give their time pro bono or low bono, and that really boosts the returns in the foundation. It's very generous of them. If you'd like to know who those good souls are, you'll find them all on our website, and I would recommend that to you to go and have a look. Thank you to Emily and thank you to Ingrid very much. That was a very generous gift of your time and very kind of you to be so open and transparent about your story and your history. I remember the first Tony Foundation board meeting, which must be, 10, 12 years ago now, and it's just fantastic to still be working with you all of these years later. It's wonderful. I also have a boomerang mouth organ. I just thought I'd get that in there, and it was actually gifted to me by somebody who worked in the old building in King Street. I'm sure he probably nicked it, but anyway, it's a fantastic piece of history and I treasure it. Thank you, Fiona, for researching and facilitating like a maestro, as you always do. And thank you to the APS directors who are in the room tonight, and that is Jan Swinhoe, John McMurdo, Graham McKenzie and Dan Phillips. All the APS directors give their time and enormous experience to APS, and we're incredibly fortunate to have them. So afterwards, if you are in the room and staying on for a drink, please go and chew their ear off and talk to them about APS and ask them questions. I'm sure they would be delighted. I haven't asked them about that. I'm just throwing them to the wolves there. A special thank you to Dan Phillips and Macquarie Bank, who support APS so wonderfully with this lovely venue and make the event possible, really, this evening. And a big shout out to Nikki Allen and Sharon Chung and all the APS team who've worked so hard on this event, including Stephen Manning, who dedicated himself with gusto to curating an Albert's playlist just for this evening. He had a great time doing it. Thank you, Stephen. And thank you especially to the APS leadership team who are all in the room tonight, so please chew their ears off as well. I know they hold our clients and our colleagues in their hearts and minds with a high level of commitment, and it's terrific to work with them. Lastly, and most importantly, thank you to each one of you for your generosity to the community and for your ongoing engagement with the charitable sector. The world seems a very uncertain place. I'm glad my super feels like it's a little more comfortable now. Thank you very much, Chris. But the world does seem like a very uncertain place just now. But what we learnt about APS clients through the pandemic was that when the community had a need, when the country had a need, when other countries needed it, APS clients lifted their giving and their engagement with new areas requiring immediate help during the pandemic. This may very well turn out to be another of those extraordinary times. And if it is, then please know that APS will lift with you to support you as you undertake your philanthropic work. It's time for us to farewell people who are attending online, and thank you very much for your time and commitment and to coming this evening. But to those here in the room, please do stay for a drink and a chat. Opportunities for face-to-face engagement are precious nowadays, it feels like, since COVID. So at the risk of sounding like I'm organising speed dating at the local, please do catch up with the people you know, and please do start a conversation with some of the people that you don't. Thank you very much and have a good evening.